Hey, Shalom, Akim, Shalom, Call Halal, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah HaKodesh. I want to say double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and salutations to Yakim out there pushing the word sincerity and truth. It's the brother Ariala. And today I just want to kind of talk about the situation that's going on with Moab, which is China, and their current situation that they're having with this large corporation called Evergrande, centered around their real estate and basically this corporation is getting ready to collapse in a similar manner as the Lehman Brothers collapse that we saw cause catastrophic effects and ripple effects in the global markets back in 2007, 2008. And it's looking like this may be a similar situation. But yeah, I think it highlights just how these really highlights just how these markets are locked into the B system, and as the B system kind of teeter totters and goes up and down because these other nations have capitulated and they basically set their economy up just like that of America and the West. Uh, they're going to fall the same way. They're going to fall the same way that the American economy is going to fail and fall, and it's also as everything transitions into the new digital system, all these nations are going to scramble to try to get a footing into the new systems that are coming on. And there's two videos in particular I want to play to kind of highlight these things because what we're seeing is corporate fascism, and basically these governments are utilizing international corporations to go ahead and start to take over the nations, but they need to dissolve that old kind of capitalist, communist in a way model to come into this new age MOB model. And so I'm gonna play a few clips. One of the things that we've talked about in several of the different algorithms is just how Moab and Edom have always been partners. Here in Ezekiel, the 25th chapter, and 8th verse, it says, "Thus saith the Lord power, because that Moab and Seir do say, Behold, the house of Judah is like unto all the heathen. Therefore, behold, I will open the side of Moab from the cities, and his cities which are on his frontiers, the glory of the country of Beth Shethemoth, Baal Meon, and Creathium, unto the sons, unto the men of the east with the Ammonites, and will give them in possession, and the Ammonites may not be remembered among the nations. And I will execute judgments upon Moab, and they shall know that I am the Lord." And so there's always these end time prophecies concerning Moab, Edom. These nations have always been in cahoots, so to speak. You know what I mean? They've always done evil and basically did the nation of Israel dirty. And basically what we see is the nation of Moab has profited from the consumerism of America, and the engine of America is you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Point blank, period. You can't get around it. And so when you read in 2nd Ezra, the 15th chapter, and you go down to the 46th verse, it says, "And thou, Asia, that partaker of the hope of Babylon, and art the glory of her person, woe be unto thee, thou wretch, because thou hast made thyself like unto her, and hast decked thy daughters in whoredom, that they might please and glory in thy lovers, which have always desired to commit whoredom with thee. Thou hast followed her that is hated in all her works and inventions. Therefore saith the Lord, I will send plagues upon thee, widowhood, poverty, famine, sword, and pestilence, to waste thy houses with destruction and death." And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing this real estate collapse and really coming war. There's always rumors of war with Taiwan and all these nations over in the South Pacific Sea, and we're just seeing the beginning parts of a complete and total collapse, right? So I'm gonna play this clip, and then we'll get a few other scriptures.
To the elephant in the China shop. Evergrande Group, it has missed its third round of bond payments in 3 weeks. Now, this puts investors at risk of large losses at the end of a 30-day grace period as the developer wrestles with $300 billion in debt. Now, Evergrande's woes have raised fears of a...
Now, you want to talk about thick clay, you know what I mean? $300 billion in debt. Like, who is giving out all of these loans? It's America. It's the East. It's this Western system that's basically allowed nations to pile on abayat in the Hebrew. Abayat means debt. You know, it's just ridiculous. You know, and it highlights even more how Asia has been a partaker in the hope of Babylon.
Fallout that could hurt not just China's economy, but also markets beyond China. Lo Min Min tells us more.
Fears of a default by Evergrande have been rattling global markets for weeks, and the latest news is sure to further dent market confidence as the developer faces a wall of debt. It's one of China's top 3 developers, and regulators have warned that numerous sectors could be exposed to heightened credit risk if it were to default.
Right, so it's going to affect the sectors that are connected with this corporation. The amount of debt and the basically the ties that it has with other people is going to create a ripple effect. So when you go and you read this, it makes Habakkuk 2:6 jump off the page. Shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his, how long? And to him that laden himself with thick clay. Shall they not rise up suddenly that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be for booties unto them? Because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land, and of the city, and of all that dwell therein. And so we see how these, them taking on all this debt has now it's so interconnected. All of these different corporations are so internationally connected. One domino falls, and it causes a trickle effect of multiple dominoes falling. Okay, now if you want to go watch that video, the name of it is Evergrande misses third round of bond payments in 3 weeks. So you can tell there's rounds of bond payments, niggas ain't got it, all right? And so I want to skip, just so I don't belabor the point too much, to this video here. Now, this is on the George Gammon page. He always does very good, detailed, meticulous videos on economic, trends and, everything like that. In this video, obviously it's a 50-minute long video, so I can't play the whole thing, but I have definitely grabbed out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a few clips out of this video, and a few 2 or 3 minute clips out of this video. So it'll take me probably about 10 to 15 minutes to go through the clips that I want you, Akiam, to see, because he does a good job of breaking down the reason why this Evergrande corporation is a problem. Okay? All right, sorry about that. And so I want to start with this first part of this video. He breaks it down into these 3 different sections, talking about the global financial collapse and how it's likened to the Lehman Brothers. And then he kind of goes into like pristine collateral and how that affects being able to put out loans and payments and everything like that. And then he leads into how, there's kind of like there's nothing new under the sun, and how a capitalist society can leak into a communist society and like this revolving door of tyranny, that the leaders of nations go through, which is interesting, and then kind of puts it all together with a global financial collapse. And so I want to play a little bit of this, and Lord willing, it's edifying.
How Evergrande in China could collapse the global economy. I'm going to explain this to you in 3 simple, fast steps. Step number 1. Let's go over something that nobody in the mainstream media is talking about, the Chinese repo market. And just for a little bit of backstory on Evergrande, in case you've been hiding under a rock the last couple of weeks, it's this huge real estate company in China that owes over $300 billion and is at risk of default, bringing down their economy and potentially having systemic risks across the globe. But like I said, I think most in the mainstream media aren't seeing the bigger picture. So let's dive right in. It starts with going back to the GFC and Lehman Brothers. One thing the media is saying that may be kind of correct is this could be the next Lehman moment. So let's go back to what actually happened, because there's a lot of confusion around the GFC itself. So first, we had Lehman Brothers that had all of these assets on their balance sheet: mortgage-backed securities, treasuries, and asset-backed securities. Well, as we know, those mortgage-backed securities were really backed by housing, and more specifically, the average Joe's ability to pay back those loans. Well, what happened when the rates adjusted upward? The average Joe could no longer afford to make the mortgage payments. That's why he's holding the sign here that says bad times. So he was going through some bad times, and this had a ripple effect that brought down the value of mortgage-backed securities. But let's look at reality. Most people assume that like 50% of these mortgage-backed securities went bad. But that isn't really true. Editor, let's go ahead and throw up a chart, and we can see that the average delinquency rate prior and really after the GFC for mortgages, about 4.5%. And during the peak of the crisis, the delinquency rate went up to about 9%. Now, that's a doubling in the delinquency rate, but it's not like it went from 4.5% to 40%. Or what the average Joe or Jane out on the street would probably guess it went up to 80% or something.
So basically what he's saying is during the global financial crisis of 2008, 2009, about 4.5% of people were defaulting on their loans. Well, then it went up to like 9%. So it wasn't like just like everybody couldn't make their payments. So it shows you how delicate the market is. That increase of 4 or 5% made everything go haywire. Why? Because this is a system based upon OU, hope, maybe you can pay me in the future. It's just all just empty promises and words. And so when you mess with the confidence of that market, then you throw off all of the basically the flow of the market. Okay, because when you have the lack of confidence and you have the lack of kind of perpetuating or kicking the ball down the road, so to speak. And so now we're seeing this in the Chinese market, basically the same model.
Astronomical. So this was more of a problem of perception, not really or something astronomical. So this was more of a problem of perception, not really reality, but it sheds light on the fragility of the system itself, the Eurodollar system that completely broke down. More on that in just a moment. So Lehman Brothers had all these assets on their balance sheet, but they need cash to function. Their day-to-day operations need liquidity. So where do they typically get that liquidity? That would be the repo market. And I've done several videos on the repo market and how it works. We'll put links in the description below. But let's just pretend, for those of you who are newbies to the channel, that Lehman Brothers has farmland. They can't really sell it, but that farmland could have a lot of value. Well, they need to make payroll. So what they do is they borrow against that farmland to get the liquidity they need. And then maybe in the future, they'll go ahead and sell the farmland over a period of time and then pay back the loans.
Boom. So basically, I'm going to skip ahead, but basically the assets that these corporations have on the books, they utilize those assets to put down to say, hey, look at these assets. I'm worth about this much. Can you give me a loan? And they use that loan money to go handle business out in the market. Well, when something happens to your corporation to show that, oh, you really ain't doing that good, you need to go get more liquidity. You need to go get more cash so you can continue to conduct the business. Well, now the repo market is like, hell no, they ain't giving you no money. You broke. You defaulting on these payments. We're not giving you no more loans. So now the business that you were supposed to be handling, you don't have the cash because you're not being able to borrow it. Okay? So I'm going to skip down here. Go about right here. Yeah, this will make so.
In your area is $4.6 million. That is what I call a real estate bubble. So you have all these people that are completely dependent upon capital appreciation. In other words, their housing price continuing to go up, which basically bails them out of this loan that they have that they could never, ever pay back. And let's also remember that real estate is 20 to 30% of the total GDP in China, an astronomical number. So what happens when Evergrande can't make good on the promise or all the deposits they've taken for, let's say, 1 million apartment units? What does that do as far as a ripple effect throughout the rest of the Chinese housing market? If that brings down prices at all, you could see a huge domino effect with people not paying back their mortgages, which would transfer over to the assets on the balance sheets of the banks themselves. And therefore, we've got, it's not counterparty Pete, but we've got counterparty Ping. That is right. Pete's Chinese cousin. We'll call him. He's in the same business as Pete is. So Ping looks at what's happening with Evergrande, and he understands the systemic risks throughout the rest of the economy and the real estate market. So when the Chinese bank goes to Ping to get the liquidity they need, and they say, here, Ping, we'll give you these mortgage-backed securities, what does Ping say? The exact same thing that Pete said over here. Hell no, I don't want any of your mortgage-backed securities because I don't know what the value of those mortgages are going to be in 2 or 3 weeks. And then they say, okay, Ping, well, we'll give you these corporate bonds. And he says, absolutely not. I don't want those either, because those are backed by entities like Evergrande that could collapse in 2 or 3 weeks. So just like over here, Pete looks at the situation and says, no way, Jose. Over here, Ping looks at the exact same setup in China and says, no way, Zhong. I guess that.
So you see how the systems are similar, how Moab systems are similar to Edom systems, and how they're all going to fall on top of each other. Everybody talks about how China is going to do this and China is going to do that. No, China is going to fall like the rest of them with economic warfare, literal military warfare, famine in the streets, supply chain problems, people divided against themselves, and ultimately thermonuclear destruction. It's going to be, they're all linked. They're all linked, okay?
That's Chinese for Jose. At least that's what I'm guessing. So we have Evergrande potentially leading to a housing debacle in China, just like we saw in the United States, which led to the bad times here and the bad times for China Cho, the average Joe's Chinese cousin. And this is my best rendition of Chinese. We'll assume that that says bad time. This is a skinny house for skinny people.
All right. So, if you want to understand that more, you can go back and watch this video. But we're seeing how the pieces of the puzzles around the world are coming together for absolute devastation. You know, we see the supply chain issues, which that's another lesson that I'll end up doing. We see the political turmoil that's going on with the Vicky and how that's dividing the people, and also we see that there's positioning and jockeying amongst these nations about where is going to be the epicenter of this new digital MOB system. And so now the old systems, these old systems of funny money and the U.S. dollar kind of controlling everything, these old systems are being liquidated. They're being literally done away with. And so they're amongst this collapse that's going to happen. It's going to be the issuing in of a completely new social economic system. Piece by piece by piece. All right. In Ezekiel chapter 7, verse 11 says, violence has risen up into a rod of wickedness. None of them shall remain, nor of their multitude, nor of any of theirs. Neither shall there be wailing for him. The time is come, the day draweth near. Let not the buyer rejoice, nor the seller mourn, for wrath is upon all the multitude thereof. For the seller shall not return to that which is sold, although they were yet alive, for the vision is touching the whole multitude thereof, which shall not return, neither shall any strengthen himself in the iniquity of his life. Okay? They have blown the trumpet, even to make all ready, but none goeth to the battle, for my wrath is upon all the multitude thereof. All right? The sword is without, and the pestilence, and the famine within. He that is in the field shall die with the sword, and he that is in the city, famine and pestilence shall devour him. And so what we're seeing is this rising up of this critical mass that's happening. And this is just one scripture that kind of highlights, impending doom. And so I just wanted to read it for that purpose, because there's impending doom getting set to befall Edom, Moab, and all the confederate nations that have basically come together underneath this whole world system. And it's all just little pieces of the algorithm. The economic collapse, Esau and the nations with him think they're going to be able to utilize it to bring in this new digital MOB system. But what it's going to cause is nothing but absolute, total mayhem and chaos. And that mayhem and chaos is what we're going to see lead into what the Bible calls the War of Armageddon, the third woe, where fire is going to burn. Babylon the Great, this whole system of rulership is going to fall. The nation of Israel, there's going to be an elect that's risen up and saved out of it, and a whole new system is going to be brought in. But this new system is going to be a system of righteousness. The intention is that the evil man, the seed of the wicked, Esau, thinks that he's going to have his digital godhead set up. Well, it's going to be a snare. And Moab and all the other people that have kind of like come along with it are going to fall with it. But I want to play a couple more parts of this video, because there's some interesting things that he breaks down. Okay, so I'm going to skip to this part at the 20th minute mark. He starts to talk about late stage capitalism and basically the progression of an economy from the view of Karl Marx. And basically we see how not just China, but a lot of the Western world has kind of followed this model in a certain type of way. And it leads to the MOB systems, the market-based systems. Check this out.
But in order to understand the bigger picture, the macroeconomic picture of what is happening right now with Evergrande in China, we have to understand what late stage capitalism is. Let me explain. I have this timeline that I put up on the board, and this was given to us by a gentleman by the name of Karl Marx. And he came up with this concept on how to create a socialist utopia. Now, I'm going to use socialism and communism kind of interchangeably. I guess we should just use Marxism and call it good. But his idea is that you would start with feudalism. This is where we have a lord and a serf. But the next stage of economic development that would improve the living standards for society at large.
And so America had that feudalistic system as well, but it was accelerated by the slavery of you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, fueled enriching America to a state of hyper-capitalism.
Would be capitalism. Marx saw all the industrialists of the time in the United States and in the West creating all of this wealth and creating jobs for their workers. So Marx, contrary to popular belief, didn't hate capitalism at all. He saw it as a useful tool. That you couldn't go from feudalism to socialism or communism without implementing capitalism first, because the capitalists are very good at creating goods and services. But he saw a problem, that as capitalism progressed, you would get to a point of late stage capitalism or end stage capitalism. This actually was not Marx's term, but it was a name given by Marxists later on in the future. So in late stage capitalism, it's this process where the capitalists that own the business are trying to squeeze more and more profits. But they're doing so by reducing the wages of the workers who are actually their customers. So inadvertently, they're going to be destroying their own profits because they're paying the workers, who are the customers, less and less and less. If the workers themselves have less disposable income, they're spending less money with the capitalists. That means lower revenues and lower profits. So the capitalist is going to seek out other opportunities to make more and more money. How are they going to do that? By speculating on financial assets. So when you see what happened in the United States in 2008 during the GFC or the dot-com bust, or maybe even long-term capital management blow-up in the late 1990s, or you see what's happening today in China with Evergrande, the Marxists would see that as a sign of late-stage capitalism. And in their view, if you allow late-stage capitalism to continue, it will completely feed on itself to the point where the whole entire system collapses and society goes right back to a stage that's very similar to feudalism, and they have to start the whole process over.
So basically, after these capitalists start to create more and more goods and services in the society, it becomes more and more prideful. And so the people who are owning the businesses that's giving the employees a job start to take advantage of them. And basically, there's this negative feedback loop. You know, here in Sirach 7 and 19, it says, "For go not a wise and good woman, for her grace is above gold." We know that's out of the society. They've done away with that. "Whereas thy servant worketh truly, entreat him not evil, nor the hireling that bestoweth himself wholly for thee. Let thy soul love a good servant, and defraud him not of liberty." And this is what we're seeing here in what's called late stage capitalism, is that the actual people who are making things go, the middlemen, the employees and the small business owners, even that pay the banks and that pay these large institutions and corporations, they're being defrauded. All right, they're being taken advantage of, and that what happens is there's a rise in rioting and fighting and division. Okay. Now, when that happens, what the governing body needs to come in with what? Regulations and controls. Right? So that's what we read about, and we read a little bit about it in Ezekiel 7, but when you go to Revelation, the 12th chapter, and you skip down, it goes into the sentiment of this beast, right? You go to Revelation chapter 12, verse 12 says, "Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time." So there's this window of time that the devil understands that he needs to use. Basically, we see Satan, the devil, trying to speed up his agenda. And we know that it's a snare. If you're spiritual, it's a snare. It's a trap. He's laying a trap for himself, as the scriptures say. His own crafty devices are going to be his downfall. Okay? Now, going here.
Over again. Unless the revolutionaries come in and take over the means of production from the capitalists themselves. Then, once the communists, the socialists, or the Marxists are in charge, they can create this workers' paradise and socialist utopia, building on the foundation that was built by the capitalists themselves.
That's the MOB system. Okay, so now we're seeing this push from the administrations, and this is happening in the United States with Edom, and at the same time, it's been happening in China. China locked arms with the West. They fueled this capitalistic system. China propelled itself as the number 2, so to speak, nation in the world. Okay, and now they're the ones that are providing the chips. They're the ones that are providing the basic infrastructure for this MOB system, while the United States comes back as the overarching spirit of things, the woman that ride it, you know? And so you have these economies that have latched on to this idea. And Moab is an extension of that idea, right? And we're seeing it play out.
So just to review, according to Marx, it starts off with feudalism. We have a lord and a serf. Then the capitalists come in. With capitalism, they create all of this wonderful industry and these jobs. So the capitalists are very happy then, but the workers, kind of not so much. Then we get into late stage capitalism, where the revolutionaries come in with their torches and pitchforks. They burn everything to the ground. They take over the means of production using whatever means necessary. Then the workers are extremely happy because the revolutionaries take over power and build this workers' paradise and socialist utopia. So a lot of you right now are probably saying, okay, George, I get it. I understand how late stage capitalism.
Right. And so, you know, now we're seeing them move to this next part. You know, we're seeing them regulate social media. We're seeing them basically everywhere you go. You know, you can't come to work if you don't have the certificate. You can't travel here. You can't do that. We're seeing a shutdown in supply chain. All right, so these large mortgage companies that's inside of the United States, that's inside of China and other areas, they can't pay their loans back. We need a whole new reset. All right. We need a whole reset. Let's go to this part.
1976, freeing up the economy and creating a system of capitalism. But as most of you know, Deng Xiaoping is no longer the leader in China. It's Xi Jinping. And he is taking a different approach than his predecessor. Or it may be the same game plan. The Chinese are notorious for implementing these 50, 100-year plans and then executing them methodically. But whether or not Xi Jinping is implementing the same plan as Deng Xiaoping, or he changed it altogether, that doesn't really matter. The bottom line is he believes, most likely, that China has moved into late-stage capitalism. And you can tell by his actions. What has he been doing lately? He's been taking a more authoritarian approach and reining in all of the capitalists, letting them know he is in charge. Some would say he's moving closer to socialism, trying to go back in time to a point prior to Deng Xiaoping creating the reforms in the first place. Editor, let's cut to a CNBC clip of Kyle Bass further articulating my point.
The moves that Xi is making right now are possibly an impediment to Chinese growth, which would be theoretically good for the world. I mean, the 6 biggest companies have already lost $1 trillion in value. They're talking about, there's a quote in the journal that says, the big risk for China is Mr. Xi suppresses much of the entrepreneurial energy and innovation coming out of China if they become much more government-centric and much more socialist, in other words, which we're grappling with here ourselves. I mean, is that the worry that China transforms itself back to the way it was before it embraced capitalism?
Yeah, I mean, look what they've done to their gaming sector. Look what they did to their for-profit education sector. They've basically pulled the plug on many sectors in their economy. They're reining in tech. They're requiring 50% of profits or more on top of their tax rate of companies like Alibaba and Tencent for the quote common prosperity.
I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that Xi Jinping is implementing this plan and these are his reasons. I can't get into the guy's head. All I'm doing is looking what happened starting in 1976, in 1991, and then seeing.
He's just moving and being a part of the overall Babylonian, Babylon the Great system. What we read about in Revelation 13 all the time. That's what he's doing. He's a partaker of the hope of Babylon. Xi Jinping is a partaker of that hope. Okay? And that goes into Revelation 13:15. He had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, that no man might buy or sell save that he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. We are watching the implementation of these global agendas for the MOB systems. Okay? And that's why the Most High is going to have to come with fire. Right? He's going to have to come with judgment. Okay? I'm going to skip and go to another part real quick. I didn't even watch porn.
The real lesson from China that we're seeing today.
Step number 3, the GFC 2.0
and then GFC means global financial collapse.
Game. Now is the time to connect all the dots. And I know most of you are probably saying, oh my gosh, George, this is definitely stiff drink time because this is where it gets really heavy and intense. But you would be wrong, because I don't want you to pour yourself a stiff drink. I need you to put on your thinking cap, because we are really going to get into the weeds about how.
Now, to go into the weeds, you would need to come and basically follow his channel and kind of go back into a lot of the different things that he talks about, because he's putting a lot of ideas into a small package. In this 50-minute clip, you're not going to, unless you study it, or if you have that affinity. There's certain brothers that are really into that. There's other brothers that are not, and you don't have to be into that to understand, this gospel, And so we're not going to watch all of that. This whole point is just a overarching idea of how kingdoms work from that royal side, and that's the side that does intrigue me. How kingdoms work. I think about King Solomon kingdom. I think about the kingdom that we're going to have and how things are going to be moved and processed. So watching this kingdom fall and the mechanisms of how stuff gets on the table, it's very interesting to me. Like, how did that bread get there? What was the process? Who controlled it? How can we control it? I think about those things, that interest me. So for you, if you really want to get deeper into this, if you're inclined in that way in the spirit, you're going to have to go watch the video, because I'm not going to watch all of that for the sake of this lesson, okay?
How the global monetary system actually works, so you can figure out the probabilities of Evergrande and China creating a global economic collapse. So let's dive right in. First, I want to review steps 1 and 2. We talked about Evergrande real estate and the Chinese repo market really causing a financial crisis in China. In step number 2, we talked about how it seems like they are transitioning back into a model of central planning, trying to create this socialist utopia. And if they do, that is going to decrease economic output. But one thing I want to point out before we move any further is that a collapse in China isn't really necessary to create a global economic collapse. That's what we're going to get into throughout the rest of this video. when I explain the whiteboard. In a perfect storm situation, the only prerequisite would be China going into a deep recession or depression. This is absolutely key. Now I need you to put that thinking cap on, because we've got some required knowledge and some crucial data to go over so you can get your head around how this system actually works and what the downside risks could be.
All right, and so he's going to go through all of these different things within trade, and you just need to understand that China is a huge component of how U.S. dollars are circulated around the world, and in a backlog of China being able to get cash flow so that they can operate is a backlog to the rest of the world being able to operate in a large sectors, which the whole economy works off confidence. It works off confidence that you're going to get your money in the end. When you don't think you're going to get paid, you will stop doing business with a person. If you don't think you're going to get a reward, it's going to handicap the relationship. All of these different nations are starting to learn. Going into business with the whore of Babylon was not a good idea. I'm not going to get paid. And that is a part of this shameful spewing in the parable that's being brought up against him that we read about in Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter. As a matter of fact, it reminds me kind of like of the scripture. I want to say it's Isaiah, the 47th chapter. Bear with me, Akyam. I want to say this is Isaiah 47. And then when you read down, let's see. Isaiah 47 and 15, it says, "Thus shall they be unto thee with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. They shall wander every one to his quarter. None shall save them." Okay, so the delicious nature, because this place is lived deliciously through its predatory capitalism, it's going to lead to what? Divisions, rebelling, and fights. People trying to get to new systems. Everybody trying to figure out how they're going to maximize their own profits. Now there's warring and fighting going on. And in the midst of that, that's going to lead to the MOB systems. But while that's going down, you're seeing these different nations that's dealing with this virgin daughter of Babylon, the whore that rideth upon the beast. You see these economic divisions and political divisions that happens. All of these rumblings are going on before the war of Armageddon, and it's interesting to see it all play out. Right, we blow the trumpet, telling people, "Hey, look, it's going down. It's going down." I had, I think this is a Moab scripture in Jeremiah 48 and 42, "And Moab shall be destroyed from being a people, because they have magnified themselves against the Lord. Fear and the pit and the snare shall be upon thee, O inhabitant of Moab, says the Lord." Right? And so, that the pride that comes with working with Esau is going to lead to judgment on the nations, man. And Moab is one of those chief nations that's going to get judged. Okay? It's going to get judged. Okay? So as we see these things happen, ain't going to be no getting around it. It's going to be amazing. Where am I at? Going back. Real quick. Last clip. We'll wrap this up.
Now, the asset side of their balance sheet doesn't have loans anymore that they've given to all of the businesses, but now those loans have been replaced with bank reserves, and most likely dollar-denominated bank reserves. Now, they don't actually lend out these dollars, but like we were saying earlier, that gives them additional balance sheet capacity to extend more credit, create more loans, which gives these businesses the ability to grow and gives them the liquidity they need to survive. But what happens if China goes into a significant recession or a depression? Then fewer dollars are coming out because less imports are going in. And one man's spending is another man's income. So if the dollar-denominated income or cash flow from these businesses disappear, then their ability to pay back the loans disappear. That means default. Then what happens is these banks can't offer the liquidity to the other corporations, and they can't offer other debt to new corporations that are starting or trying to expand their business by increasing productivity. Therefore, the euro dollar system starts to break down. We see a deflationary debt deleveraging, very similar to what we saw in GFC 1.0. And this brings me to the next step, which is not a doom vortex. Oh no, this is far more complex, but it's vital that you get your head around this. So I've got a new term for what we're doing here. It's not a doom vortex. This is a doom matrix. So the doom matrix starts off at the top with demand and spending.
So it's a doom algorithm, man. It's a doom algorithm. Everything is doomed in this place, man. But why? Because it was built on wickedness. Scripture says, for unrighteous dealings and riches gotten by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people unto another. Okay? And everything that they're trying to set up, man, is all going to lead into destruction.
If this goes down, the incomes that these entities are receiving in dollars goes down. Well, if their dollar income goes down, then their debt burden that they owe the bank increases. If their debt burden increases and they don't have enough dollars to make those loan payments, what do they have to do? A lot of them will have to access the FX market. So what that means is they'll take some of the cash flow that they have that's coming in their local currency, and they will trade it for dollars to make those loan payments to the bank. But what does this do to the relationship between the two currencies? Well, there's more demand for dollars, but there's also additional supply of the pesos, yen, euro, or whatever the local currency is that they're trading for the dollars.
So they're going to have to trade for these dollars, and it's going to make their currency weaker in the market, and it's going to make the dollar stronger, which is going to make everything more expensive. Everything. And put a strain on all these different countries.
That means the value of the dollar relative to their local currency goes up, which exacerbates the problem even further. So their local currency goes down, the dollar goes up, and this goes right back into creating an even bigger debt burden denominated in dollars than they had before. Then we move over, and this creates defaults. So defaults in the banking system, the Eurodollar system, go up. And this creates less balance sheet capacity, or BS capacity, whichever you prefer. Lower amounts of balance sheet capacity equal more defaults. And this transitions or goes right up to velocity decreasing. And remember what we talked about over here, if velocity decreases, then the amount of dollars needed to service the same amount of debt increases. So lower velocity would also increase the debt burden, which by now is skyrocketing, and it would take us right back into this mini doom loop, because lower velocity means that those entities would have to trade more of their local currency for the dollars, which would make the value of the dollar go up, the value of their currency go down, and that increases the debt burden.
So this is how the relationship between all these different nations start to get strained, and people want to break off and do this and do that, and because all of these trade deficits are creating currency wars, which is creating real wars on the back end as everybody wants to fight and get in a better position. And that type of issue is what we read about in the book of Obadiah. When you read the book of Obadiah, it mentions this confederacy and how it's basically sought out Esau, right? So when you go to Obadiah 1, and it's only got one chapter. I don't know what I'm saying like that. when you go to verse 1. The vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Lord, power concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee. Thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. If thieves came to thee, if robbers by night, how art thou cut off? Would they not have stolen till they had enough? If the grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some grapes? Right. So we're in a situation where there's going to be nothing left. It's going to be completely pillaged. Verse 6 says, how are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought up? All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. So everybody's going to be moving on their own means and terms, right? Right? These nations are going to be moving on their own means and terms, like we read about in the book of Jeremiah. Everybody's going to flee to their own country. All right? And these straining systems are just going to create more and more division and war. But because of pride, they're going to think that they can be able to complete this mission of the MOB. It's not going to work.
Even more. But the carnage from the lower velocity doesn't stop there. It would also lead to less demand and less spending, which brings us right back to the top of the doom matrix. It creates a feedback loop where every time you go around, the problem gets worse and worse and worse. This could result in a biblical-sized global debt deleveraging.
Biblical. We're in the last days of the last days, and we're seeing things ramp up piece by piece by piece in the algorithm for it. All right? Moab is just a part of this whole system of things, and because he's been a partaker, he's going to fall and be burnt. She's going to fall and be burnt.
Which could bring down the entire system. It would crush asset prices, which so many economies have been built on. It would destroy and further break the euro dollar system, and it would lead us to GFC 2.0. But this time, the Fed and the global central banks might not be able to bail us out. And all of this could be triggered by a recession or depression in China that leads us to a collapse of the global economy. And what
we'll see. And so, that's just a part of a small part of a bigger plan, but I wanted to highlight it, talk about it, because I saw that it was in the news a little bit, man. And Lord willing, this was edifying. This can lead brothers to more information if they want to go get it. We go through these scriptures all the time, and the mindset that we have about it, and we understand that the downfall of this place is multi-layered and interesting, and it's all prophecy, and we just hope for the hastening of the coming of Yahushua, so we can get out of here and come into something new and better, right? So call halal Yahweh Bahashim Yahushua Bahashim Rakahakodash. Double honors once again to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and salutations to Yakim out there, man. Shalom.